The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the stellar dawn, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. Captain Daho Park stood motionless on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic displays surrounding him. At 53 years old, he had seen many strange things in space, but nothing quite like this. The ship's advanced sensors swept across the Sol system, gathering data about the third planet from the Sun. Earth, as its inhabitants called it, looked deceptively peaceful from this distance, a blue marble wrapped in white clouds, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "Captain," called Lieutenant Jai-Yun Lee, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor as she approached. Her usual confident demeanor seemed shaken. "You need to see this immediately." Daho turned to face his second-in-command. Jai-Yun had served with him for 8 years, and he had never seen her this unsettled. She held up a data pad, her hands trembling slightly. "Our database scan is complete," she continued, her voice steady despite her obvious concern. "Every single predatory species in our records has marked Earth with warnings. Not just a few species, all of them." Daho's eyebrows rose. "Show me," he ordered, taking the pad from her hands. As he scrolled through the data, his frown deepened. Warning after warning filled the screen. Earth. Category: extreme danger. Humans must not be engaged. Avoid Earth sector at all costs. Protected system. Do not approach. Warning. Human territory. Retreat immediately. The ship's AI spoke up, its calm voice filling the bridge. "Captain, I have analyzed 12,467 separate warning markers from 3,891 different species. The oldest warning dates back 50,000 years. The most recent was posted just 3 solar cycles ago." Daho walked to the main viewport, his reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could sense their unease. "In all my years of exploration," he said softly, "I've never seen species agree on anything like this." Jai-Yun joined him at the viewport. "That's not all, sir. Look at this." She waved her hand, and a new hologram appeared before them. "These are images from our long-range scanners. The humans have primitive space stations, basic fusion technology, and early faster-than-light experiments. By all measurements, they're barely a Type 1 civilization. Then why," Daho mused, "are species far more advanced than them leaving these warnings?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Ensign Min-Su, who usually maintained a respectful silence on the bridge, spoke up from his sensor station. "Sir, I've been monitoring their communications. They have something called entertainment media. Stories they tell each other. One caught my attention." Daho nodded for him to continue. Min-Su cleared his throat and read from his screen. "It's about something they call a honey badger, a small earth animal. The humans find it amusing because it fights creatures many times its size and wins. They say it doesn't care about danger." Jai-Yun's eyes widened. "Are you suggesting that humans might be the honey badgers of the galaxy?" Min-Su finished. "The data suggests something similar. Every species that has attempted to hunt or study humans has disappeared or been severely damaged." The bridge fell silent as this information sank in. Daho returned to his command chair, his mind racing. The Stellar Dawn was one of the most advanced ships in their fleet, with cloaking technology that should make them completely invisible to Earth's primitive sensors. Yet something about those warnings made his spine tingle. "Sir," Jai-Yun said quietly, "protocol suggests we should leave and mark this system as restricted." Daho stared at the holographic display of Earth, watching as it slowly rotated. Something about this mystery pulled at him, demanding to be solved. In 15 years of xenological research, he had never encountered such a fascinating puzzle. "No," he decided finally. "We'll maintain our position near Jupiter, but we'll increase our scan range and gather more data. Something made all these species fear humans, and I want to know what it is." As if in response to his words, a small alert appeared on his display. One of their probes, stationed near Mars, had detected something unusual, a signal that shouldn't exist given Earth's technical level. The mystery of humanity was just beginning to unfold, and Captain Daho Park had a feeling that the warnings they'd discovered were only the tip of a very large and possibly dangerous iceberg. "Log this in the ship's record," he commanded. "First official contact observation of Earth, marking standard date. Note that the system shows unprecedented warning levels from multiple species. We will proceed with extreme caution." As the crew acknowledged his orders, Daho couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced once more at Earth, barely visible from their position near Jupiter. What secrets did that seemingly peaceful planet hold? And more importantly, what had happened to all those who had ignored the warnings before them? Little did they know, their presence had already been noted by Earth's hidden defense systems, and deep beneath the planet's surface, in bunkers unknown even to most humans, ancient protocols were beginning to activate. Research Officer Ta Min Kim sat hunched over his workstation in the dimly lit research lab of the Stellar Dawn. Empty food containers and data crystals littered his desk, evidence of his 3-month obsession with understanding humanity. The soft hum of the ship's engines provided a constant background noise as he worked through another set of historical records. A holographic display flickered before him, showing the remains of what had once been the mighty Krax Empire. The images were disturbing. Abandoned cities, empty fleets drifting in space, and countless warning beacons left behind. Tai Min rubbed his tired eyes, trying to make sense of it all. Still at it. Science Director Hae-Yoon Choi's voice made him jump. She stood in the doorway, her cybernetic eye glowing softly in the dim light. The enhancement was standard for their species' top scientists, allowing them to process vast amounts of data quickly. "Hae-Yoon, you need to see this," Tai Min said, waving her over. His usual calm demeanor had given way to nervous energy. "I've been tracking patterns across multiple civilizations, and it's frightening." Hae-Yoon pulled up a chair, her cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted to the dark. The holographic display shifted, showing 3 distinct star empires: the Krax Empire, the Valerian Collective, and the Midnight Federation. "Look at these timelines," Tai Min explained, moving his hands through the hologram. The Krax Empire, at its peak, controlled over 200 systems. They discovered Earth about 300 years ago. Within 2 months of their first hunting expedition to Earth, their entire civilization began to collapse. Hae-Yoon leaned closer, her enhanced eye recording everything. "Show me the others." The Valerian Collective was even more powerful. Ta Min continued, bringing up new images. They prided themselves on collecting specimens from every sentient species. They lasted exactly 43 days after attempting to collect humans. The data scrolled past, showing the rapid decline of these once mighty civilizations. Ships vanishing without trace, colonies going dark, entire fleets found abandoned in deep space. But most disturbing were the messages left behind. "Leave them alone." Hae-Yoon read from one beacon. "The humans are not what they seem." Tai Min nodded grimly. "That's not even the worst part. The Midnight Federation was the most advanced of them all. They had technology we can barely understand. They try to study humans secretly, just like we're doing now." Hae-Yoon's organic eye widened. "What happened to them?" "Nobody knows exactly," Tai Min replied, pulling up the final records. "But their last transmission was just one word, repeated over and over: run." The research lab fell silent except for the gentle hum of machinery. Through the small viewport, Earth was barely visible, a tiny blue dot in the distance. It looked so harmless. "There's more," Tai Min said quietly. "I found references to something called the Protocol. Every species that survived contact with humans mentions it. It seems to be some kind of defense mechanism, but the details are always missing from the records." Hae-Yoon stood up suddenly, her cybernetic eye flashing red. "We need to tell the captain about this immediately." Wait, Tom Min grabbed her arm. There's one more thing you should see. He pulled up a final image, a scan of Earth's surface taken just hours ago. Look at their cities, their technology. It's all too perfect. What do you mean? It's like a facade, he explained, zooming in on various locations. Their technology appears primitive, but there are energy readings that don't make sense. And look at these structures. They're not just buildings. They're disguised as buildings. Heyoon's enhanced vision confirmed what Tom Min was showing her. Beneath the seemingly primitive exterior of human civilization, there were patterns that suggested something far more advanced. They're hiding, she whispered. But from what? Or for what? Before Tae-min could answer, the ship's alarms began to blare. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the lab. Captain Daho's voice came over the intercom, tight with concern. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We've been detected. As they rushed from the lab, Tae-min caught one last glimpse of Earth through the viewport. A harmless-looking blue planet suddenly seemed much more threatening. All those warnings, all those vanished civilizations, they were about to find out firsthand why humans were marked as off-limits. And somewhere on Earth, deep beneath the surface, ancient machines were awakening, and the protocol was beginning its age-old sequence once again. The ship's library was silent except for the soft hum of preservation fields protecting ancient artifacts. Cultural specialist Sun Mi Kang sat at her workstation, surrounded by floating holographic translations and crystalline tablets that glowed with a faint inner light. Her heart raced as her fingers traced the strange symbols on the tablet before her. The artifact had been in their archives for decades, but no one had been able to fully translate it until now. The recent focus on Earth had led Sun Mi to discover that certain patterns in the text matched old human languages. This connection had been the key she needed. This can't be right, she muttered to herself, double-checking her translations. The tablet's story was too incredible, too terrifying to be true. With trembling fingers, she pressed the ship's intercom button. Within minutes, the library filled with the senior crew. Captain Daho Park stood at the front, his arms crossed, while Research Officer Tom Min Kim and Science Director Heyoon Choi settled into nearby chairs. Lieutenant Jae-yun Lee remained standing by the door, ever vigilant. I found something. Sun Mi began, her voice barely above a whisper. These tablets, they're from the Anxthal civilization. Heyoon's cybernetic eye whirred as she processed this information. The Anxthal, they're just a myth. No, Sun Mi said, shaking her head. They were real, and they were the first to discover humans. She activated a holographic display, showing the translated text floating in the air. The Anxthal were apex predators, evolved from pack hunters. They conquered over 1,000 worlds, collecting trophies from the dominant species of each planet. The crew watched as images formed in the air, reconstructions of the Anxthal based on the descriptions. They were fearsome creatures with multiple rows of teeth and natural armor plating. Their technology had been beyond anything currently known. They found Earth during what humans would call their Bronze Age, Sun Mi continued. The Anxthal saw humans as perfect prey, physically weaker, technologically primitive, but intelligent enough to make the hunt interesting. Captain Daho leaned forward. What happened? Sun Mi's hands shook as she activated the next section of the tablet. They set up hunting grounds in multiple locations, places humans would later call Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and ancient China. But something went wrong. The humans, they didn't react like any prey species they'd encountered before. The holographic display showed scenes of ancient human settlements. The humans noticed patterns in the hunts. They began setting traps. They studied the Anxthal's technology when they could, learned from every encounter. But that wasn't what destroyed the Anxthal. What did? Jae-yun asked from her position by the door. The humans discovered that the Anxthal were hunting other species too. Weaker species, primitive species that couldn't defend themselves. Sun Mi's voice grew stronger. And that's when everything changed. The humans stopped acting like prey. They began protecting other species, turning the Anxithal's hunting grounds into death traps. The next images showed scenes of devastation. Anxithal ships destroyed, their mighty cities in ruins. Within one Earth year, their entire civilization collapsed. The survivors encoded a warning into their genetic memory, passing it down through generations. The humans are not prey. They are the ultimate predators. Heyun's cybernetic eye flashed as she processed the information. But how could Bronze Age humans defeat such advanced technology? Sun Me pulled up the final section of the translation. That's the most frightening part. The tablets suggest that humans weren't primitive at all. The Anxithal found evidence of something they called the Great Sleep, hints that human civilization was far older and more advanced than it appeared. The library fell silent as the implications sank in. Captain Daeho was the first to speak. Are you saying that humans deliberately appear primitive? That they're hiding their true capabilities? The Anxithal came to believe that humans were guardians, Sun Mai explained. That they deliberately reset their civilization many times, returning to basics while maintaining hidden technologies and knowledge. They protect not just themselves, but any species they consider under their protection. Suddenly, the ship's emergency alerts began flashing. Lieutenant Jai Yun rushed to a nearby console. Captain, we're detecting energy signatures from Earth. They're like nothing we've ever seen before. As the crew rushed to their stations, Sun Me looked once more at the ancient tablet. There was one last line she hadn't translated for the others, one final warning from the Anxithal. Beware the sleeping giants. When humans go to war, they do not fight for victory. They fight for extinction. The Stellar Dawn sensors continued to detect growing energy signatures from Earth, and Sun Me couldn't help but wonder if they were about to learn firsthand why the mighty Anxithal had feared humans so much. Security Officer Jin Woo-yun paced the restricted section of Deck 7, his footsteps echoing in the dimly lit corridor. 5 other crew members watched him nervously as he outlined his plan, their expressions a mixture of excitement and fear. Look at their technology, Jin Woo said, pulling up a holographic display of Earth. Combustion engines, primitive space stations, basic computer systems. We're centuries ahead of them. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had spent years in military service. Ensign Yule, the youngest of the group, raised his hand hesitantly. But sir, what about the warnings? The Anxithal, the Krax Empire. Jin Woo waved his hand dismissively. Ancient history. Those civilizations were probably careless. We have better technology, better stealth systems. He zoomed in on a small settlement in northern Canada, a cluster of buildings surrounded by snow-covered forests. This location is perfect. Isolated, small population, easy to contain. The others gathered around the display as Jin Woo continued. Our stealth shuttles can land without detection. We'll use sleep fields to subdue the humans, collect our specimens, and be gone before anyone notices. This is against direct orders, Medical Officer Seo reminded him, but her voice carried more curiosity than concern. Captain Daeho specifically said no contact. The captain is too cautious, Jin Woo replied. Think of what we could learn. We'd be the first to successfully study humans up close. Our names would be in every scientific database across the galaxy. In the ship's main security hub, Lieutenant Jai Yun Lee was running routine scans when she noticed something odd. Power readings from Deck 7 were higher than normal. She enhanced the scan, her eyes narrowing as she detected the signature of active stealth shuttle preparation. Meanwhile, Jin Woo and his team had moved to the shuttle bay. They worked quickly, preparing 2 stealth shuttles for launch. Their movements were practiced, efficient. Jin Woo had clearly been planning this for weeks. The sleep fields are charged, reported Engineer Min Yi, checking her instruments. Range is set for a 10-kilometer radius. Should be enough to cover the entire settlement. Jin Woo nodded approvingly. Remember, we're not here to harm anyone. We'll take 3 specimens, different ages for a good study sample. Then we'll erase their memories of the event and return them. Simple, clean, and professional. In the security hub, Jia-Yun's face went pale as she accessed the shuttle bay's mission logs. "No," she whispered, seeing the target coordinates. Her fingers flew across the console. "Captain, we have a situation." Back in the shuttle bay, Jin Woo and his team were doing final checks when the bay doors suddenly sealed with a heavy thud. Red alert lights began flashing as Captain Daho's voice boomed through the speakers. "Security Officer Jin Woo-Yoon, stand down immediately." But Jin Woo had prepared for this. He pulled out an override device and slammed it into the bay's control panel. The doors began to creak open again. "Quick," he shouted to his team. "We're launching now." Lieutenant Jia-Yun's voice cut through the comm system. "Jin Woo, stop. The humans. There's something you don't understand." But her words were drowned out by the sound of shuttle engines powering up. The first shuttle lifted off, its stealth fields shimmering as they activated. The second followed moments later. Jin Woo smiled from the pilot's seat of the lead shuttle. Everything was going according to plan. Then his instruments detected something strange. The settlement they were approaching. Something was wrong with the readings. Where there should have been simple heat signatures from primitive buildings, complex energy patterns were beginning to emerge. In the ship's library, cultural specialist Sun Mi Kang watched in horror as her translation matrix decoded another section of the anexophil tablets. "Beware their settlements. What appears simple on the surface often hides their most dangerous weapons below." The shuttles continued their descent toward the seemingly peaceful Canadian settlement, unaware that deep beneath the snow, ancient defense systems were awakening. Sensors that had slept for centuries detected the approaching threat, and mechanisms designed by long-forgotten human engineers began to power up. Captain Daho's voice came through one final time. "Jin Woo, for the love of all that's sacred, turn back. We're detecting energy signatures from the surface. They're not what we thought they were." But it was too late. As the shuttles entered the atmosphere, their sensors began to fail one by one. The last transmission from Jin Woo's shuttle was a single, confused word: impossible. On the Stellar Dawn's bridge, the crew watched helplessly as events unfolded below. They were about to learn firsthand why every species in the galaxy had agreed on one simple rule: humans are off limits. Snow fell softly over the Canadian settlement as Jin Woo's shuttles hovered silently above. Through the stealth fields, he watched the humans going about their evening routines, lights glowing in windows, smoke rising from chimneys, a few people walking their dogs in the gentle snowfall. "Activating capture fields now. Engineer Min," he reported from the second shuttle. The advanced technology hummed to life, creating an invisible dome over the settlement. Jin Woo smiled, satisfied that everything was proceeding according to plan. That smile vanished instantly when every light in the settlement went dark simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, new lights began to emerge. Soft blue lines appearing in the snow, forming complex geometric patterns across the ground. "Sir," his sensor operator's voice shook, "I'm detecting massive power signatures from underground." Before Jin Woo could respond, the snow-covered ground began to move. What had appeared to be small hills and natural formations split open, revealing dark cavities beneath. From these openings, structures began to rise, sleek, metallic towers that definitely didn't match Earth's known technology level. "Impossible," Jin Woo whispered, watching as the peaceful settlement transformed before his eyes. The humans weren't running in panic. Instead, they moved with practiced efficiency, each person heading to specific positions, as if they'd rehearsed this countless times. In the second shuttle, Minhee's voice came through filled with terror. "Our capture field. It's being reflected back at us. Systems failing." Jin Woo watched in horror as his companion shuttle's stealth field flickered and died. The craft became visible, hanging exposed in the night sky. From one of the newly emerged towers, a beam of soft green light swept over the shuttle. Its engines died instantly. Emergency protocols. Jin Woo shouted to his crew, "Retreat to minimum safe distance." But as he tried to turn his shuttle around, he realized they were already trapped. The same geometric patterns that had appeared in the snow were now visible in the air around them. A three-dimensional grid of energy that had quietly surrounded them while they were focused on the ground. Below, the primitive humans had donned what looked like simple winter gear. But Jin Woo's sensors showed that these seemingly basic clothes were anything but. They were reading energy signatures that rivaled his shuttle's defense systems. This was never a settlement, the sensor operator realized aloud. It's a defense post. It always was. Jin Woo's comm crackled with a new voice, a human voice, speaking perfect galactic standard. "Unidentified vessels, you have entered restricted space. Power down your systems immediately." From his shuttle's viewpoint, Jin Woo could now see that the entire landscape had changed. Gone was the quaint Earth village. In its place stood a complex of advanced structures, seamlessly integrated with the natural environment. The humans had been living literally on top of a military installation, going about their daily lives as if it wasn't there. "Captain," Jin Woo called desperately to the Stellar Dawn, "we need immediate extraction." But the response from Captain Daeho was grim. "We can't help you, Jin Woo. Our systems are being held. Somehow they're keeping our entire ship in place. We're detecting similar installations activating across the planet's surface." Through his viewport, Jin Woo saw humans emerging from the buildings wearing what appeared to be simple winter coats. But his sensors told a different story. Each piece of clothing contained technology far beyond anything his people possessed. They moved with the confidence of a species that had spent centuries preparing for this exact scenario. "Your vessels will be impounded," the human voice continued calmly. "You will be detained and questioned. If you resist, we will respond accordingly." As if to emphasize this point, one of the towers emitted a pulse that instantly cut through their remaining defenses. Jin Woo's shuttle systems went dark, and they began to descend slowly, caught in some kind of controlled gravitational field. From his helpless position, Jin Woo finally understood what all those warnings had meant. The humans hadn't just prepared for invasion. They had centuries of defensive technology hidden beneath a carefully maintained facade of primitiveness. Every home, every street, every piece of clothing could transform into advanced technology at a moment's notice. As his shuttle touched down gently in the snow, Jin Woo saw humans approaching, their simple winter gear now clearly showing its true nature. Advanced environmental suits with capabilities his sensors couldn't even analyze. They moved with the practiced precision of a species that had been ready for this moment for a very, very long time. They were ready, he whispered into his failing comm system, hoping the Stellar Dawn could still hear him. "They've always been ready, and we never had a chance." In orbit, the crew of the Stellar Dawn watched helplessly as similar installations activated across the planet's surface, revealing a world that had been carefully hiding its true nature from the galaxy. They were about to learn why humans were marked as off-limits, and why every species that had ignored that warning had disappeared. The snow continued to fall peacefully over the transformed settlement, covering the advanced technology in a deceptive blanket of white, ready to hide it all again once this situation was resolved. It was a perfect metaphor for humanity itself, peaceful and primitive on the surface, but concealing incredible power beneath. The bridge of the Stellar Dawn was unusually quiet as Captain Daeho Park and his senior staff watched the holographic displays showing their captured shuttles being carefully secured by human forces. After 12 hours of tense observation, a pattern had begun to emerge that changed everything they thought they knew about Earth. "Play that historical sequence again," Daeho requested, his voice soft but intense. Science Director Hae-Yoon Choi nodded, her cybernetic eye whirring as she accessed the data they'd gathered. The holographic display filled with images spanning human history. But this time, they weren't looking at wars or technological advances. Instead, they watched countless instances of humans protecting other species on their planet. "See here," Hae-Yoon pointed to a series of images. When they developed industrial technology, their first response wasn't to expand. It was to create protected areas for their planet's wildlife. When they realized their actions were harming the environment, they immediately began developing clean energy. Lieutenant Jai-Yun Lee, who had been analyzing the settlement incident, stepped forward. The weapons they used against our shuttles, they were purely defensive. They could have destroyed them instantly, but instead, they chose to disable and contain. Cultural specialist Sun Mei-Kang had been cross-referencing this with her translations of ancient texts. It's not just recent history, she added. Look at their oldest stories. They're filled with themes of protection, of standing up for the weak. Even their entertainment media consistently shows them defending others. The display shifted to show Earth's current wildlife preservation efforts. They watched as humans used advanced technology to protect endangered species, restore damaged ecosystems, and maintain careful balance in their planet's biosphere. The settlement that captured Jinwu, Daho mused, it wasn't just a military installation. It was also a wildlife research station. Even their defensive posts served multiple purposes. Research officer Ta Min Kim, who had been quiet until now, brought up a new set of data. Their space program is the same way. We thought it was primitive, but look at these energy readings. They're not just exploring. They're actively protecting their solar system from natural threats like asteroids. The crew watched as hidden satellites around Earth revealed their true nature, not just simple communication devices, but a complex network of defensive and protective systems. Every piece of technology humans had created served multiple purposes, with protection always at the core. They're not hiding their technology because they're afraid. Hae-Yoon realized. They're hiding it because they don't want to intimidate the species they're protecting. They deliberately maintain the appearance of being less advanced than they are. Sun Mi pulled up more historical data. Look at how they treat their own developing nations. They don't conquer them. They protect them, help them grow at their own pace. They apply the same principle to other species. The display showed countless examples of human intervention in natural disasters, disease outbreaks, and environmental crises. Each time, their response was measured, focused on protection rather than control. The warnings in our database, Daho said slowly, they weren't trying to tell us that humans were dangerous. They were trying to tell us that humans had already claimed this sector as a protected zone. And we just violated their primary directive. Jai-Yun added grimly. We tried to capture beings under their protection, themselves. A new alert flashed on the main screen. The humans were sending them a message. The crew tensed, expecting punishment for their transgression. Instead, the message was surprisingly gentle. We understand your curiosity. We welcome peaceful contact. But you must understand, this sector is under our protection. All life here is sacred to us. We will defend it, but we would prefer to share our knowledge with those who share our values. Daho looked at his crew, seeing the understanding dawn in their eyes. We've been looking at this all wrong, he said. We thought we were studying a primitive species, but we were actually encountering the galaxy's guardians. Hae-Yoon's cybernetic eye flashed as she processed this revelation. Every species that attacked Earth wasn't just attacking humans. They were attacking the protectors of countless other species. No wonder they responded so decisively. As if to emphasize this point, the holographic display showed new images from Earth. Humans tending to injured animals, replanting forests, cleaning oceans, and teaching their children to protect all forms of life. The real question, Sun Mi said softly, is what we do with this understanding. Captain Daho straightened in his chair, his decision already made. We respond to their message. We show them that we understand their purpose. And we learn from them, not as conquerors or hunters, but as students of what might be the most advanced form of civilization we've ever encountered. The crew nodded in agreement as Daho began composing their response. They had come seeking to study what they thought was a primitive species, only to discover something far more profound. A civilization that had mastered not just technology, but the art of protection itself. The warnings they'd found in their database now made perfect sense. Humans weren't off limits because they were dangerous. They were off limits because they were vital to the survival of countless species. They were the guardians, the protectors, the shepherds of life itself. And now, the crew of the Stellar Dawn had a choice to make. Would they become part of this grand mission of protection, or would they remain merely observers of it? The Stellar Dawn hung in low Earth orbit, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. After receiving clearance from human authorities, Captain Daho Park stood on his bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger in their view screen. This would be the first authorized landing of an alien vessel on Earth's surface. All systems checked and ready, Lieutenant Jai Yun reported from her station. The humans have provided landing coordinates and atmospheric entry protocols. The ship began its descent, following the precise path the humans had laid out for them. As they entered the atmosphere, the crew noticed something remarkable. Their path was being shielded by unseen technology, making their entry smooth and controlled. "They're protecting us," He-Yun observed, her cybernetic eye tracking the invisible shield. "Even now, their first instinct is to ensure our safety." The landing site came into view, a vast circular platform surrounded by what appeared to be simple buildings. But the crew knew better now. Those structures likely contained technology far beyond their understanding, carefully hidden beneath an unremarkable exterior. Broadcasting our approach message on all frequencies, Communications Officer Min Su announced. Daho's voice rang out clear and strong. "We approach not as hunters, but as fellow guardians of life." The response came immediately, in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome, Stellar Dawn. We accept your peaceful intentions." As the ship touched down, the crew could see a delegation of humans approaching. They wore what appeared to be formal attire, but subtle readings suggested their clothes contained the same advanced technology they'd witnessed earlier. Daho took a deep breath, straightening his uniform. "Remember," he told his senior staff, "we're not just making first contact. We're meeting the guardians of this sector of space." The ship's main hatch opened, and Earth's air rushed in, clean, fresh, and carefully maintained, like everything else on this planet. The human delegation waited at the bottom of the ramp, their posture relaxed but alert. As Daho descended, he noticed small details that told larger stories. The landing pad was surrounded by carefully tended gardens full of local wildlife. Even here, at a first contact site, the humans maintained their role as protectors. The human leader stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm Director Sarah Chen," she said, extending her hand in their traditional greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth." Daho took her hand, noting how this simple gesture of trust had become their standard greeting. "Captain Daho Park of the Stellar Dawn. We come seeking understanding and friendship." And perhaps, Sarah smiled, "to learn why we're considered off-limits by so many." The captain nodded, appreciating their directness. "We've learned much already. Your response to our unauthorized observation was most enlightening." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Your crew members are safe. They're being treated well and will be returned to you shortly. We hope you understand why we had to respond as we did." "We do," Daho replied. "You're not just protecting yourselves. You're protecting everything in this sector of space." The human delegation led them into one of the buildings, which revealed itself to be far more than its simple exterior suggested. Inside, holographic displays showed Earth's vast network of protective systems, not just for humans, but for every species under their care. "This is why we maintain the appearance of being less advanced," Sarah explained. "Many species we protect would be frightened by our true capabilities. We prefer to guide and protect from the shadows." As they toured the facility, Daho and his crew saw countless examples of human ingenuity focused on preservation and protection. They watched as humans coordinated efforts to save endangered species, restore damaged ecosystems, and shield developing civilizations from harmful interference. "We'd like to propose something," Daho said finally. A new protocol for our database, one that better explains why humans are off limits. Sarah nodded encouragingly, and Deho continued. Humans are off limits, not because they are weak, but because they are the galaxy's guardians. Approach with respect, or do not approach at all. The human director smiled warmly. We would be honored by such an entry. But perhaps we could add one thing to it. That those who share our commitment to protecting life are welcome as friends. That evening, as the Stellar Dawn's crew celebrated this historic meeting with their human hosts, Daho watched the sunset over Earth. He understood now why every species that had tried to hunt humans had failed. You couldn't conquer a species that had mastered the art of protection itself. The new protocol was transmitted across the galaxy that night, marking the beginning of a new era. Earth was no longer a mystery to be solved or a prize to be claimed. It was a beacon of hope, a place where life itself had found its most dedicated guardians. As night fell, the seemingly primitive human settlement transformed once again, revealing its true nature as a testament to advanced technology used not for conquest, but for protection. And in the stars above, countless species rested easier, knowing their guardians were watching over them. The story of the Stellar Dawn would be told many times across the galaxy, but its message remained constant. Humans were off limits not because of their weapons or their technology, but because they had chosen to be the shepherds of life itself.